Well, hello, and welcome back to the Conscious Contact podcast in living color. If you're just listening to this on your podcast app, we now have video on our YouTube channel.
Hooray!
We'll link that below because the URL is a bunch of numbers right now. But we're working on it. You'll be able to find us at Conscious Contact. And I'm just excited. This is fun. That's new.
Yeah. A lot of changes happening. A lot of changes.
That is for sure. Also, shout out to the book club again before we get into our topic and our introductions and our topic. Tell us all about it, Susan.
Yeah. So we are launching the Conscious Contact Book Club.
Yes, we are.
Conscious Contact Podcast Book Club. Do I look at you or do I look at the camera?
You can look at me. This is going to get real casual real quick because I'm not editing this at all.
So we are launching a book club because we both love books.
Yes.
And we love to talk about books, and we can just never talk about them enough.
Yes.
And so October is when we'll be reading the book, and then we'll have the discussion on October 27th. And the book we have chosen is Anger by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
And this book, we'll get into reading habits in a second.
Yeah.
But it is barely 8:00 on a Thursday morning, and I've already had to apologize to my husband because of something I read in that book. I'm like, oh.
It'll do it to you.
So,
if you want to join
it's important. Yes, it's important. It's an important read. It's important to talk about books.
Yes.
And if you would like to join in that discussion, and we'll send you the Zoom link. It's going to be a virtual discussion on the 27th at 7:00. And you can go to Conscious Contact Podcast and you scroll to the bottom, and then there's a link to register. We'll get you the Zoom link when it gets closer.
Yes, I'm excited. So, in case you didn't know, if you've shown up on this podcast and don't know who we are, I am Genay Peavey. I'm here with my co-host Susan Sanders, and we just like to talk about how to get more conscious contact with the world around you, how to be present in all ways, shapes, and forms, from the surface level to the super deep, which is where we normally go. And today, shocker, we're going to talk about books. Spoiler alert.
What a segue. Gosh, that's really good planning. Yeah, so let's do like we normally do, and we'll start with surface level. What are your reading habits? Like, what does your reading life look like?
A shit show.
Always or right now because of the season you're in?
Right now because the season I'm in, and we just got through the high holidays. I'm Jewish, and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are pretty much back to back, and then we got Sukkot coming up next week, and a lot of stuff going on there. So I was lucky enough to get invited to a friend's house, and bringing food, and then keeping up with house duties. Our house that we're building on some land in Eden, things are starting to move with that. I'm trying to be cognizant of that kind of stuff. My sleeping habits are terrible. I have insomnia right now. The list goes on. So it's not great. But when I start, and I think you are kind of the same way, but you're like this most of the time, it's like obsessive almost. So once I get into it and I find a good string of books, it's just like a couple books a week. And it's not, it's wonderful, but I do have to watch myself because I'm black and white. It's either feast or famine.
Yeah.
And I would love to be more gray and consistent. So we'll get there once this season chills out a little bit. How about you?
Well, okay. I'll talk about that in a second. I just, what if there isn't ever really a time where things slow down?
I know, right? Yeah. We have to make that time. And I do need to do that. We talked about my sleeping habits on our previous episode. I'm not in a place where I'm ready to work on that still.
Right.
Not in enough pain yet, apparently. But I'm getting there. And that's normally like my solid reading time.
Yeah.
Audiobooks during the day. It's fall. I'm starting to walk more, so I am listening during my walks and stuff, which is glorious. And then at night, I'll pick up a physical copy.
Yeah. So my reading habits, shocker, are going to be a little more rigid. I have, I always have several books going at once,
Mm-hmm.
and it runs the gamut of audiobook, nonfiction, fiction, physical book, and Kindle. Um, and I will read nonfiction in the morning during kind of my on ramp to the day, and I set a timer for that. It's 15, like I've
Oh my gosh.
specifically
Yeah.
dedicated nonfiction, like not even, I don't want to call it self-help as much as I want to call it, I was going to say personal development, but that's self-help, I guess. But
No, I think those are very different.
it feels different.
Yes, I think those are very different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I want to say personal development versus like a nonfiction that is memoir.
Yes.
Because
Oh,
memoir
yeah.
could also be considered like your nonfiction.
Yes.
My
yeah.
opinion might, or my description of what happened might be different from someone else's. So anyway,
Yes.
I have a specifically chosen nonfiction. Then when I exercise, I definitely do audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
Don't at me about my earbud when I'm on the bike. I'm not gonna have
Oh,
that
I haven't
discussion.
even. I've never seen it, so I'm not gonna
Yeah,
throw you any shade.
I put the earbud in the ear that is away from traffic.
Yeah. I do that when I'm walking. So
Yes, and when I'm walking, I only have one in because I'm convinced someone's gonna run up behind me and like club me in the back of the head
Well,
with an
yeah.
axe.
Duh.
So I'd like to be able to hear them running. So I guess I get clubbed in the front of the head with an axe.
In the front.
So yeah, that's audiobooks. And even when I do like strength training, my physical therapy exercises, I'll put that in. So, and then the rigidity ends, right? So then it's like whenever I want to pick up a book, I do read before bed.
Mm-hmm.
I find, so we're going to quickly get in deep. So
Yeah.
I find that sometimes the black and white thinking with reading comes in because I'm procrastinating doing something. And so I will pick up a book and read and just be like, oh, well, this is a library book, so I should go ahead and knock it out. Well, I have the book for 14 days. Like,
when has it ever taken you specifically 14 days to read a book?
exactly. Yeah. If it takes that long, I end up abandoning it.
Oh, I want to touch on that really quickly.
Yeah.
Surface level. I had no idea what DNF meant because we're on Goodreads and we should link that
Yep.
in case you want to follow along with how little I read and how much she reads. And the differences between the two, because I think we read, sometimes we'll cross over, but I think a lot of the times we read like vastly different, multi-dimensional stuff, which is super cool to see.
Yeah.
But she leaves a lot of reviews and is so good about that, and I am not. I just give it a star and move on. But she would put in there at the beginning like DNF, and I think we were still in Artist's Way when I asked you about this.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell is DNF? I was like, this sounds super, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking
Is this
it was.
reading code?
Yeah.
It's not, it's a sports thing, did not finish. So when you run a
Yeah.
race and you stop the race for whatever reason, it's a DNF. So if you got hit by a car, if you just said, this is bullshit, I'm not running the back half of the marathon, if you get injured, whatever it is, it's a DNF.
Yeah.
So I abandon books with wild abandon.
Yes. And I was like so shocked that
Yeah.
you would do that. First off, that anyone did that and that was
Yep.
like okay. I didn't understand that at all. I was forcing myself to read books I didn't like
Yeah.
for the entirety of my life up to that point.
Right. Because that's what we're taught.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you were just like, nope, didn't like it. And you give it a good shot. Like you'll talk about how many chapters you were in and you didn't connect with it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you can do that? You can just stop reading something?
Yeah, as a book lover, I've decided it is better to stop reading it than finish reading it and throw it. Because I've had
Yeah.
a couple that I've thrown.
Yeah. I've got some popular ones that I don't understand why people enjoyed so much that were like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple things about abandoning books. Yes, abandon if you don't love it.
Yeah.
I recently calculated out, like, at this pace of reading, I will die before I finish reading all the books I want to read,
Yeah.
which was obvious. My husband's like,
Yeah.
Is there more to this or what?
Yeah.
So I will quit the books that I'm not connecting with, because so it's the connection, because even if I hate a character, sometimes the book is written for you to hate that character.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
don't abandon just because I don't like the character, or if I'm super uncomfortable with what is happening. Well, if that was the case, we wouldn't have a goddamn book club, because I'm really uncomfortable with the idea later. So we can't quit books just because I'm uncomfortable with
I've
it.
been there. I get it.
Yeah. And for that reason, when you do look on Goodreads, I rarely have anything rated lower than a 3.
Yeah.
Because if it's a 1 or a 2, I will just quit it and move on.
Yeah. No, I love that though, and I feel the same way. I'm not going to quit something unless I just truly don't like the writing. Like, nothing to do with the storyline or the characters.
That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, like if I just don't enjoy the way they write,
Yes.
I cannot, no matter how good the story is, I can't jump in full force if I don't like the cadence and the word usage and the amount of quoting that they do and all of that.
Right. And that's not to say it's a bad book, because there's a quote out there, life's too short to read bad books. But it's just that it's not for me.
Yes, exactly. And I was telling somebody this the other day, I don't know. This quote is attributed to Marilyn Monroe, I think, but I highly doubt that is who said it. Because
I'm about to sneeze. Sorry. Go
ahead. For it. It's, you can be the ripest, juiciest, most perfect peach in the world. And there are going to be people that don't like peaches. Yeah. Like, you're not, you especially. Right. Or asparagus or Brussels sprouts or it depends on the person, and just because it's not for me, it doesn't mean it's not great for somebody else. It's just I'm not gonna ignore my own thoughts and feelings on it just because everyone else says this is wonderful.
Yes.
Because it might not be for me.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about reading on Kindle or physical books? Because there is some controversy. There isn't controversy. People feel strongly. Yeah.
So I have an older Kindle that is dead in my drawer and has been for a while. I used to read on it a lot. I have a lot of books on there that I need to read, I'm sure. But there's something about a physical book. So like when I started really getting into audiobooks, that was it for the Kindle for me. Because if I'm not going to read a physical book, I would rather just listen to the audiobook, I think. I don't think I've ever thought about that before right now. But yeah, that really took the place of the Kindle for me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I just really like a physical, tangible. I mean, shocker. I like a physical. We both are very into the physical and tangible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't read voraciously enough to warrant having that Kindle take up my brain space, I think a little bit too, because then, I've got multiple computers to organize. I've got my life to organize, my closet to organize. And the Kindle was just one more thing.
Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
It was just another clutter. And is it charged? Is it not? I don't want to think about that when I want to read, you know, like I just want it to be there and available. Yeah.
Well, what do you do when you travel? Because there was a point in time where you guys were traveling quite a bit.
Yeah.
Do you read on planes?
Yeah. I'll either download a bunch of audiobooks, like depending on the flight and where we're going, and then bring a physical book. And if I'm done with it, then I'll just buy one.
Yeah.
Buy another one at the airport, because I'm sure they'll have one that's on my list.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. The airport read and return is one of my favorite things of traveling. So if listeners don't know what read and return is, so it's certain airports,
not Greensboro Airport, just as FYI. I don't
Greensboro
think
has one.
Oh, really? Whoa.
Heck yeah, they do. Yeah, or we'd be flying out of different airports. Yeah, so when I fly out of Greensboro, I will buy a book in Greensboro, and I usually read it before I finish it before I get to my destination. And then when we get off the plane, if it's a reciprocal airport, I can go into that bookstore. It has to be the same
actual bookstore. Yeah.
In the airport, the same parent company. I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I was gonna say manufacturer.
No, I think parent
Manufacturers don't
company.
manufacture bookstores.
Yeah, no, parent company.
If it's the same parent company, you can give them the book back and they'll give you 50% of the book
Huh.
just refunded on your card.
Yeah.
And then inevitably what I do is I purchase another book.
Well, duh. Yeah,
and then
that's what they're hoping.
Right. And then I can return it in the Greensboro airport. And you have up to 6 months.
What?
So for a long time, I was definitely traveling, definitely flying every 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's pretty great. And that's when I started using Goodreads to track my reading
Mm-hmm.
because I had, so I'm in the bookstore and I purchase a book and I get back to the gate and I start reading. I'm like, oh, I've already read this one before.
Oh, no.
So I go back and I said, I literally just bought this. Can I clearly haven't finished it. Can I get a full refund? And she was like, yeah, that's fine. So she did it and I got another one. I get back to the gate. I had read that one too.
No.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah.
I don't have that problem yet. I aspire to be at that level. I've only had that happen to me one time, and it was with an audiobook.
Yeah.
And I was like, get out. There's no
Yeah.
way. And I mean, I had read it forever ago.
Yep.
And someone was
Yep.
like, you should read this. I'm like, oh, yeah, it sounds really good.
Yeah.
Well, it was when I read it years
I loved
ago.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. But yeah, Goodreads is amazing for that.
Yeah. So I was too embarrassed to go back to the store. So I just returned it in another airport. So,
No.
not disappointing people. Let's add that to our topics.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. So traveling while reading is great. I wondered what you did about the Kindle because I know you do consume books when you travel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
that's-
just bring one. Yeah. I let it, that's just added weight on my carry-on. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm willing to part with that space, because most of the time I'm not bringing a laptop. I'm not bringing, I've
Yeah.
got the availability to do that. I don't have kids. I don't need to bring a bunch of extra crap.
accoutrement.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't travel heavy anymore other than clothing. But that's just, I don't think that's ever going to change.
Yeah.
But extra quote unquote travel stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
more. So
Yeah.
I've got room for for books for that reason.
Well, when we go to, since COVID, we haven't done this, but when we
Yeah.
would have family vacations to the beach, it was a driving trip. I would
Ooh.
take 7 to 10 books.
Oh my God.
And then as
love
I
it.
finished them, I would just give them to whoever I was staying with or just
Yeah.
leave them in the beach house.
Yeah.
Um,
That's cool.
yeah. So do you partake in little free libraries?
I do. There's one down the street from my neighborhood here. And I've been there a couple of times. The Greensboro Jewish Federation had a bunch of books in their entryway for a while. And
Mm.
I was like, are you sure these are free? Is this okay for me to take?
Is there a camera? Because I'm going to take the whole thing.
They are super old Jewish history books and really
Oh, that's
interesting
neat.
Israeli Palestine conflict books, which we're never going to talk about on the podcast, just so that everyone's aware, because that's too much. But it is so interesting to see, because they're all, they've got to be from 30s through 60s. They were all old. Somebody must have passed away.
From the 1930s to 1960s?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So they're pretty and they're old. And one of them came in a box set. And I just, oh my gosh. I was like,
Wow.
please make sure that they know I'm not just stealing these and you told me I can have them,
Right.
please. Yeah. But I do like that a lot. I use Libby, the library app,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
if you don't know what that is, I'm going to save your life.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a library card, you download the Libby app, Libby, I'm pretty sure.
It is.
And you put in where you live and your library card number, and then you can just take out digital copies of library books. And you can do that on your phone. You can send it to your Kindle. You can do whatever.
Audiobooks, ebooks.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes there's a waiting list. If it's a popular book, same thing as if you would go in the library. But man, that was really cool. When someone told me about, I'm pretty sure it was you. If I had to guess, I would think it was you.
Yeah.
I loved that. That's when I was using my Kindle a whole bunch.
Yep.
I use the Libby app a lot for that.
Yes. Yeah, I am a huge fan of the library. I also use Libby, and if you to get a library card is free,
Yeah.
and we can link to instructions for the local library here, but all you need to do is, look for your library, and I think you have to take in proof of address.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you have to have an ID of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yep. And I remember taking my stepkids to get their library cards, and it just was one of the proudest moments of my life.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think they ever used it, but I'm super glad we did it, because when my son left his library card, he doesn't live with us anymore, and he left that behind. I took that library card and I connected it to my Libby account, so I can have 6 more books on hold.
Yes.
And I can't remember what the limit is on how many I can borrow, but I've
Libby,
doubled
if you're listening,
my
please
quantity.
just ignore this.
That's right.
I don't know what the legalities are.
I'm sure he's reading books about, women in menopause.
Oh,
my
yeah, for
18-year-old
sure.
son.
Yeah.
It's his. Yeah. So, the thing sometimes that I hear about books are people don't know where to find them, or it's expensive to buy books.
Mm-hmm.
But the librarians will help you find books.
Yep.
You can go to Goodreads. It's the app that you were talking about earlier.
Yep.
And talking to people about books, listening to podcasts about, not that you should listen to any podcast but ours, but that's why we want to start to talk about books more.
Yeah. And, we've got a local store here. I don't know if it's just in North Carolina or what. It's called McKay's. It used to be Edward McKay's, and I enjoyed that name far more.
Yeah.
But they have people go there and can sign books, so they're super cheap. There's thriftbooks.com, which has super discounted books. I get some from there semi-frequently. It's not next day shipping, but it's wonderfully discounted as opposed to like in Amazon. But if I needed the next day, I'd still definitely use Amazon. There's also Bookshop, which is really interesting because you said that it goes to support local bookstores, right?
Independent bookstores.
Yeah. That's really cool.
So how that works is, for example, if I already had a copy, but if I were to buy a copy of Anger for the book club discussion, and I went to bookshop.org, I can put in, obviously when I check out to have it shipped, I put in my zip code.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will share part of the proceeds with the local bookshops that have signed up through bookshop.org.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So like Scuppernog maybe?
Exactly.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's a good alternative to some of the big boxes and the big online stuff.
Agreed.
So, tangent to actually sitting down and reading.
Mm-hmm.
How does reading show up in other areas of your life?
Oh.
And I can give you an example of what's rolling around in my head if you
Go
like.
for it. Yeah.
So one of the things I do to volunteer is with a local book sale. So we have actually, the day of the sale, obviously, helping check out and et cetera. But then each week we are cleaning, shelving, pricing, sorting books.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like all the stuff that happens in between each quarterly sale. And it's so fun to unbox this giant pack of books that someone, like, to think about, like, what did they think about when they read this, and why are they giving it up, and did someone pass away and this is their collection and their kids have already read it. And like I love to think about where books came from, where they're going to go next.
Yeah.
And it was not originally a place where I considered volunteering, because I had this preconceived notion about what volunteering should be. But connecting it to something I love, like books and reading,
It's just intuitive.
It is now.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. Now that how I feel when I am connected to that volunteerism with books.
Yeah.
So it's neat to see how books can be tangent. It's not just loving reading and books for sitting down and reading books, but how else that love of reading can come about.
I'm trying to think. I think mostly, I shop that book sale. I shop all of them that I can. I cook. So, I mean, that's inherently reading every day, even though it's not
Yeah.
like the entertaining type of reading.
And don't you consume cookbooks like books? Like
Oh,
you'll
yeah.
sit down and
Yeah.
cozy up with a cat and a cookbook, right?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Like when I'm doing my meal planning and stuff, or I
Yeah.
get a new one, I love to just sit down with it and fiddle with it and read it. And, I have very few, I don't, there's a specific name for them that's like, memoir cookbooks or story cookbooks or whatever. Kind of like Anthony Bourdain's
Mm-hmm.
first one. It was mostly him talking about life in the kitchen with a little bit of cooking
Mm-hmm.
stuff in there.
Right.
I
An
don't
occasional recipe thrown in.
exactly, like, I don't do that. What I more so mean is like salt, fat, acid, heat,
Right.
where it is describing to you the science behind cooking or why this particular cook cooks the way that they do. Like Joshua Weissman, I believe that's how you say his last name. He's just talking a lot about why he chooses to like make his own buns and his own barbecue sauce and, ketchup and pho broth and, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of like why that's important to him.
Mm.
So I do like that a lot to get in the head of those people.
Yeah.
Because it's cool to like understand the thought process behind a particular recipe development,
Mm-hmm.
and how that shows up in the final product.
Yeah. And I don't read cookbooks because I don't cook. Um, but I love the idea of books where they talk about where the recipe came from.
Yeah.
A friend of mine has a cookbook that is uh Southern recipes, and it talks about
Is it
how
Deep Roots?
I think so.
Oh, that one is so
Is
good.
that the one where it's the recipes that have been passed down from generation to generation, and
Oh, I don't know.
the women were originally slaves in South
No, this is
Carolina?
different. Yeah,
Okay.
she is a North Carolina or South Carolina resident as well, but she's talking about coming from a small town, wanting to make it big in the city, moving there, doing that, hating it, coming back home, opening up a restaurant with her husband,
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
and cooking super regional Southern food in her tiny town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I read about that one in Our State magazine, Deep Roots.
Maybe
She's somewhat local to the triad.
Vivian or something. Yeah, yeah. She's
Yes,
in
I
North
read about
Carolina or
that in the
South Carolina.
magazine.
Yeah. She's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. But I like the idea of cookbooks too because it is a different way to approach reading.
Yeah.
So resistant readers, I think, have just not been introduced to the right medium.
Yeah, just something that they truly connect with. Totally agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think the beauty of reading is when you have the story in your mind.
Mhm.
So instead of just on a screen being fed to you, you're creating that story.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why I don't connect with cookbooks, because like when they talk about the flavors of doobie-doo, I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what that is.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't
yeah.
even know what food group, like where is that in the pyramid? I
What
have no
is
idea.
that? Yeah.
So I don't connect with it. And that's one of my beefs with people saying that comic books and graphic novels aren't reading.
Oh.
That is some bullshit.
Well, some people
because-
feel that way about sci-fi or,
Yes.
some
Or
people
fan
feel that way.
fiction.
Yeah. Some people feel that way about fiction versus nonfiction.
Really?
Some people are very staunch up one side or the other that the other one is not good and you shouldn't read it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Like I see random stuff on Goodreads, like people's reviews and stuff, because I like to randomly follow other people that I
Yeah.
do not know in real life. And it's just to each their own. Reading is so freaking specific.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, I would say it's more specific than like food preferences,
I think you're right.
because it's so like, you like what you like. And I happen to like everything, which is great. But,
Mhm.
like,
Well, you don't like everything because there are some things on Goodreads. Or
there
that
was
you said
one book.
there are some things where you just say this writing isn't for me.
Yes, yeah. There's a couple of those that I had that were mostly in like high school.
Yeah.
Most genres I can find something that I enjoy.
Yes. That's a
And
good way to look at it.
I didn't like sci-fi until I read Ender's Game.
Yes.
And then that was over for me. Ender's Game
Mhm.
is phenomenal.
Yep.
And like side note from that, Children of the Black, which my friend wrote, and it is freaking amazing. Is so like I love the world building in that specifically. So like each genre I find something that I really enjoy. Like the visuals from sci-fi are just unparalleled for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then like the way that a good novel set in the 1800s makes me think of life back then and being grateful to not, to have indoor plumbing and like
That's
all of
right.
that stuff. So there's something different, like inherent that I
Yes.
really enjoy about each of the different genres that are out there. And we've not even touched on anything close to all of them, but
Mm-hmm.
it is so like your palette for books, I think is so specific regardless of if you've tuned it to be that way or not. And if you don't like to read, try a different genre. Like,
Yes.
because you never know what you're gonna like versus what you're not gonna like
Yes.
until you read it and go, oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head with you can find a different flavor, pun intended. We're
Yeah,
not going
yeah.
back to cookbooks, but you can find a different flavor in each genre.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't think I liked sci-fi either.
Yeah.
And I love Ender's Game
So good.
and the Andrew Weir books.
Oh yeah, I've got one on the shelf waiting to be read.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the Hail Mary one or
Project Hail Mary.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, it's so good.
Oh, that one that we both read that I talked to you about, Dark Matter.
Yes.
That I would consider that sci-fi.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And some people are like, well, I get tripped up on the science. I get tripped up in the math. I get bogged
Just
down.
let it flow over
That's
your
right.
brain.
Yep. Because you know what? There is no quiz about the math.
No. And it isn't that important to the story, I would say 90% of the time.
Right.
Like unless you get into like super niche nerd, and I say that with love, like extremely smart
Right.
nerdy books.
Because I am married to a super niche nerd.
Yeah.
And he loved the science and the math
Yeah.
in those
yeah.
books.
Oh, wow.
But we could talk about the same book or we can listen to that book
Mm-hmm.
in the car together
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and love different things about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just can't say enough that if you haven't found something you like, keep trying. And I have 2 kids that are both reluctant readers, and it breaks my
Mhm.
heart.
Oh, yeah.
And for a long time, I was like, oh, I'm a failure as a parent, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, because their
No.
life isn't over yet.
Exactly. Yeah, I hope not.
Not that it's my responsibility to make them readers. That's a side note. But I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah.
So my daughter's going to Italy next semester with her college
Oh, wow.
program.
Yeah.
So I got her like a guide to Italy.
Yeah.
Now it's in her closet.
Yeah.
Perhaps
I-
once she goes,
yeah.
she will pull it out.
Yeah.
And my son loves fishing. So I got him an anthology of fishing stories.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe there's a different way. Like, one year for Christmas, I got them both magazines in different topics that they enjoyed.
I love
So, keep
when my relatives do that.
introducing different topics,
Forms.
medium, yeah,
Yeah,
forms.
yeah. Buy them some Audible credits or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because I can't remember which class it was, one of my kids' English classes, they said you could get the audiobook of the book that we're going to read and just follow along.
Huh.
Because sometimes what I find with my reluctant readers is they don't identify words and ideas. When they hear it, they're like, oh, it reminds me of the first time I read the word hors d'oeuvres. I was like,
Ugh.
that's
Yeah.
like I'd heard the word hors d'oeuvres, but I remember being in the car and being like, spelling it out. And my sister's like, that's hors d'oeuvres. I'm like, that's hors d'oeuvres?
Yeah.
Hors d'oeuvres.
$100. Yeah.
So don't give up, right? is
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
would
Just
say to
keep
them.
reading different stuff. Like if you don't like the book, choose a completely different genre to
Yeah.
look at it in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to take us in the Wayback Machine. Where do you think your love of reading comes from?
Oh, escapism. 100% not wanting to be in my reality, so picking up a book so that I could be in a different one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never be able to. I've looked. This is why I can say this. Never say never, but there was this series when I was in probably middle school that I read the entirety of middle school, and it was fiction, and it was about these different fictional princesses and their stories. And it was like I don't know if they used, I can't remember if they used like actual historical names for princesses. So I don't know if it was like Cleopatra and Victoria or whatever, but it was all those different landscapes, all different
Mm.
eras of
Oh, that's
princesses. I
cool.
mean, there was from Africa, from Egypt, from England, from Russia, from everywhere. So like all of their worlds were extremely different, and I absolutely loved those. Like
Yeah.
voraciously read all of them that they had in the library and made them purchase the ones that they did not have. And at the same time, being the naughty over exceller that I was at that point, I would also read very adult books that I should not have been reading at that point in time, like a lot of Anne Rice, which
Mm.
is not good for children, not because of the horror aspect, but because of the sexual uh
Content.
explicit scenes that are in there. And one that was about this boy that falls in love with a heroin addicted stripper, and like all of the fun things. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a way for me to escape my own reality and see like life in a different form,
Mm-hmm.
because that was another thing. I wasn't very socialized, so I didn't understand that my life wasn't everyone's life also. So it was
Mm-hmm.
cool to see like a myriad of different experiences, and but it was 100% a way for me to tune out what was going on around me and to find like comfort and peace and solace and safety in a different world.
Mm. Do you remember how you got those books?
Oh, the library at school. Yeah. The Anne
Yeah.
Rice was at home.
Sure. Yeah.
My mom read a ton of Anne Rice and
Yeah.
Stephen King, so those were laying around all the time. And she
Mm-hmm.
definitely went through those quite a bit. And the one that's the ABCD murders. I cannot ever remember
I
that
know
woman's
exactly what you're
name.
talking about it.
Yeah, so she
People
had all
listening are
those.
shouting at their
I
cars.
know. Yeah, sorry. But those were laying around, so I read all of those that were just chilling.
Mm-hmm.
But the definitely the library and the Scholastic Book Fair and all of that. I didn't really have any
Yeah.
physical books of my own. I don't think for
Uh-huh.
a while it was all library. I
Yeah.
still have a couple of them from my middle school.
Oh.
I did not return them.
Okay, so we're gonna hope Libby and your
and
middle school are listening.
Millbrook Middle School in Alabama is not listening. I will make restitution to you if you are listening. You just email me. I'll send you the money for the books.
Right, right. Did you know libraries have the majority of libraries have gotten rid of fines?
Really? Well, that's rude,
Yes.
because I've definitely had to pay for books that, this library up here, this is a side note that I'll quickly go through. They tried to charge me for a book that I returned.
Oh,
And I was like, wait a second. We've been through this. I'm
yeah.
not drinking anymore. I know that I returned this book
Right.
on time. And I was like, can you please just check again? Can you check your returns
Uh-huh.
trolley?
Uh-huh.
And they did, and it was there. And I was like, I know you're underfunded, but this is not,
Yeah.
this is not okay. Because it was like 30, they overcharge you if the book is gone.
Right.
And it was like $35 or something. And I was like, absolutely not. I don't even spend that on cookbooks. I wait
Right.
till they go on sale. Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
But
That's funny.
that makes me sad, because I do think that there is something to be said for the fines. The late fees and the fines, I think,
Mm-hmm.
build character and teach you to respect other people's property, which I
Right.
can't say much because I have some of the books over there, but
Well, you're not the same person you were then.
definitely not.
Yeah. Well, how did you decide to pick up? I'm really interested in this series about I'm thinking of them as like strong women of their times, whether they were
Yeah.
princesses
Yeah.
or not. And were they middle grade fiction, or were they, well, I
It
guess
was
if it was a middle school library,
It
had to
was
been.
probably more on the high school end of things, for
Uh-huh.
sure, because there was definitely like situations that were not necessarily middle school-esque in
Uh-huh.
there, and a lot of like the situations that they were in, and there's like military stuff and quite a few of
Mm-hmm.
them. Yeah, they were on the high school end of that, because the middle school and the high school were mushed together.
Okay.
They weren't intermingled, but they shared a library.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think. There was definitely high school level books in there. Not that I've ventured into it very often. Those were kind of like the middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of stumbled across it in the library.
Yeah. And they're all lined up together and they're a series. So they all look the same. And there's these beautiful illustrations
Yep.
of the women on the front. And I'm like, yeah, these are
I want to be that.
sick.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, if I could find that, if you know what I'm talking about, internet, please send me a link because I will buy every single one of them and read them again because they were just good. They were well written.
Yeah.
And truly, it was just a really good series of books. Kind of want to get them for Luke's niece because she's a voracious reader.
Mm-hmm.
Like, voracious. But she is very specific. It's like this niche series about, like, cat gods and...
I've seen that too. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is either, but she loves it and like waits for the new book to come out. I mean, like she's in it to win it. And I get it because I've been a fan of other series that I look back now and I'm like, why the fuck did I?
Yeah. And we're obsessive about other things. So we can understand why
exactly.
she would be too.
But I would love to like introduce her again, like just diversify the genres and have her pick up something else so she enjoys just as much and see that there's more out there. Because I did pigeonhole myself at that age with just very strict series and I'd be obsessed with, and that was it.
Right.
But yeah, branching out I think is good.
Yeah. And that's how we find things is people introduce us to them and have conversations about it.
I did give her a copy of Ender's Game. I don't think she'll read it, but...
Did you know that the house in the Ender's Game where he goes is here in Greensboro and it's by where I live?
What?
Yeah.
Because the writer is local, right?
He is. Yeah.
I forget that.
So the lake that they talk about is Lake Brant.
Is it?
It is.
Huh, I did not know that.
Yep.
Also, do not watch the movie.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's cool,
but
they butchered it.
Not cool enough.
I was so sad. I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
That they did it the way they did. And I'm not going to say any more than that because you just need to read the book. But they did a bad job of bringing the end of that narrative to life.
In that particular book, Ender's Game is a good one, again, back to the reluctant reader, or if you're just trying to connect with a youngster in your life. So my nephew had read it, and so it's fun to have my husband, my nephew, and I all getting to have a conversation. He was in middle school at the time.
Yeah.
But that sort of launches in, like, now when we see him, like, what are you reading? And we thought he'd like Project Hail Mary. So, my husband pulls up Amazon. He's like, it'll be at your house tomorrow. And he's like, gosh. But it's a good one that adults and middle schoolers could read. And Common Sense Media, I think it is, has a lot of different suggestions about if you're trying to connect with this age group or that age group.
Yeah.
And just because we're adults doesn't mean that we can't enjoy young adult fiction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There is something to be said for being a little less serious. And if I can take myself less seriously, we all can.
Oh, yeah. And I will never, because this is just not in my personality. I'm not into it. But there's this woman who, she's an engineer. I've talked about her in a previous episode. She has a YouTube channel that I really like. She's an engineer. She, lives in the country, has been redoing an old house. Like, she's a very smart and just wonderfully powerful woman, but she loves trashy romance novels.
Yeah.
Like the 25-cent ones at the thrift store. Like, she loves them and will put reviews on her stories all the time about it.
Right.
And I'm just like, I can't believe that is what she's into. She just loves the drama of it all.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't have it in her life, so she likes to see it play out, and she's nosy is what she says. So
That's
those are
funny.
perfect for her.
Right. It's her guilty pleasure.
Yeah. I would have never thought in a million years that she read trashy romance novels, though.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with them. I don't watch comedy. I don't watch rom-com. It doesn't light me up inside. I'm not dead inside. That just is not my thing.
I'm dead inside and I love comedy.
But yeah, it is, don't let the limits of what you think you should be reading dictate what you actually read, because there's a long time where I didn't read fiction.
Right.
Because I thought, like, I need to read, and I've obviously learned my lesson, but I need to read all the self-help books there are, and I just need to learn how to pull myself up by the bootstraps, and this, 5 seconds go will make my life better, or waking up at 5 a.m. will change everything, and, and if I'm reading anything else, it's taking away from my life, not adding to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not true, and it can just be entertainment. Like, personal development is great, and I do a lot of that, like probably too much. But, just turning my brain off or turning it down. It's not off when I listen to fiction, but
That's right. You're changing the channel.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you would want to offer? Because I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah.
I had to write down what you said. Don't limit yourself by what you think you should read.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to share?
I have a couple rapid fire questions. No explanation. We're not allowed to say anything. I'll go first and I'll let you follow up.
Okay.
First book that ever made me cry, Where the Red Fern Grows, on audiobook.
No idea.
It was terrible. It was wonderful, but it was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I could second that. I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Yeah, I cry at books regularly. Yeah. I'll have to look. I don't know. In terms of rapid fire, I can't name one, but I could come back with one because Paul will regularly look over. He'd be like, "What's the matter?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh,
you're
the
reading a book."
Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Favorite book currently? I don't want to say of all time because I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, my current favorite book is Lessons in Chemistry.
I knew you were gonna say that one.
Yep. The main character is super, super quirky, and
Yeah.
I love a quirky chick in a book.
Yeah. Probably Dark Matter, honestly. It was really good.
Yep.
It was really good.
It is. It's one of those I hope they don't turn into a movie because they're going to ruin it.
Yeah, agreed. You can't capture all of that was in my brain.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be different than what I imagined. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Last book that you put down because you couldn't connect with it or didn't want to read it or...
It was just this week and it is sitting in my car because I'm going to put it into a free little library. I won't link to the show notes. I'm
don't
not
link to it.
But, and I persisted for about 3 weeks on this one, and I would read a little bit at the end of each night before I went up to bed. And my mom was a voracious reader. And when we packed up my dad's house before he moved, we pretty much cleared out my mom's library.
Mm-hmm.
And I took boxes and suitcases full of books.
Nice.
And this is one of hers. And she and my sister and I used to exchange books. So it had her initial in the top of it because and then she would pass it to us and we knew not to give it back to her.
Yeah.
And it has my mom's initial in it. And I was like, I have to read this. My mom has died. I have to read this book. And I just couldn't.
Yeah. What was it?
It was a mystery book set in 2060. I can't remember the name of it.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I was like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
Like they just kept throwing in the fact that it was 2060.
It's like, okay, we get it.
Show me.
Yeah.
It's 2060.
Give
Don't
me
tell
visuals. Yeah. I agree with that. Some authors tend to lean on historical eras instead of actually taking the time to build that world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What'd you quit recently? What was the last you quit?
I think the name of it is My Dark Vanessa.
Yes.
I loved Lolita. I think that was great. I don't have an issue with that particular subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
However, I said don't explain it, but here I am.
I know, me too.
It was too much for me and it made me feel disgusting. And not in the way that the Lolita did, where it made me question like my thought process on things, like in a good way. It was just written in a way where I was like, no, this is a fetish book.
Yes.
And it's not okay for me. So I said absolutely not. And that's the only book I think I've ever reviewed. And because it just really hit me. I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
And not in a learning way.
You need to know what's coming.
Yeah. And it just, the way that it's gone about is not the same as Lolita. It's very graphic. And not in a way that I think adds to the story or making you think about stuff. So
if I remember my review correctly, I talked about it being giving me heebie-jeebies also.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I got what they wanted me to get out of that book. I'm done.
No, we're not going to link to that either.
No. But yeah, I think that's it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, if speaking of reviews, I have the this is a shameless promotion for Sustainable Sue.
Do it.
I've got a link on my website where if you join the 5-star list, every time I do read a 5-star book, I send out a review. Hey, and it might not be your 5-star.
Yeah.
It might just be mine.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to get recommendations, I
100%.
think.
That's where I get a lot of my recommendations. So
Yeah. And sometimes I think it's good to find out who your anti-recommendation is.
Yeah.
Because then you're not going to bother picking that book up.
True that.
Yeah. So if you want to be on the list of Sustainable Sue 5-star reads, go to sustainablesue.com. And on the right-hand side, there'll be a spot where you can sign up.
Sweet.
And that would be my joy.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's
kidding.
transition into those joys of the week.
Yeah.
What was yours?
I mean, the high holidays for sure. That it's just a time of, and I think every religion kind of has that, or spiritual practice, moments where you truly feel like, okay, this is the shift. This is the time. Like you're coming back to everything. You're really looking at your shit. You're saying, where can I let go of hatred or resentment? Where can I forgive people? Where can I be forgiven? Who do I need to go to and get on my, not like physically get on my knees, but you know what I mean? Like humble myself and say I was wrong. And where can you recognize things you did well? A lot of people do this at like New Year's. If they're not particularly religious or spiritual, you making those New Year's resolutions and what about this past year annoyed you? What do you want to be this coming year? And that is what Rosh Hashanah is. It's a new year for Judaism. So it's a lot of all the stuff that I love, like really looking at myself and cultivating what I want to let go of and being back in person for services. I mean, it was really good and grounding and community and, all the things that we talk about on here and presentness and everything.
Authentic connection with yourself, with the roots of your beliefs, with other people who share those roots of belief.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great.
That's powerful.
Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Mine's a little more frivolous.
That's
but
fine.
it's still, the word grounding is what I really relate to what you said. I found a new massage therapist and she is dynamite.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had people who are technically good massage therapists, but this woman, just the space that she created, first of all, it's really near my house, which I appreciate because there's not much by my house. But the space is normally a yoga studio. And she just transforms it into this cozy little massage space. I'm not really sure how she did it, but she did it. And the little things like, tucking in my feet, like burritoing my feet as she was changing the draping and all that stuff. And she's strong as hell. So that of course was great, but all the little things and, it was really more of a nurturing instead of just like beating me like a slab of meat.
Yeah.
And got rid of a lot of pain and just, I really enjoy also supporting an independent, business rather than, here's 50 massage therapists we have and they get half of what you pay them.
Yeah. And I love how you said that was more superficial and it definitely wasn't because you talked about, feeling cared for and safe and comfortable.
These are the words. Yes. Thank you for verbalizing how I felt.
That is not superficial at all.
I could not find the words. So yeah, that's good. That's what these conversations are about.
Yes. Yeah. That's the whole point. Like, that's why I started this. That's why I wanted you to be the co-host. Like, that's the point of life, man. That's the stuff of life. And if you want to be a part of this conversation, we would love for you to be. You can find us at Conscious Contact Podcast on Instagram. I'm at Genay Peavey, at sustainable_Sue on YouTube, at Conscious Contact. We'll have a link for that because the URL is crazy. So yeah, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to this channel if you're watching the video. And let us know your thoughts. Let us know if you hate reading, if you love reading, what your favorite book was. If you completely disagree with us on one of the books that we just talked about, we would love, seriously, please tell us.
Great conversations.
Yes.
And if you're a resistant reader.
Yeah. Join the book club.
And I would love to hear why you're a resistant reader.
Yeah.
And we promise not to talk you into reading. It's just to understand.
Yeah, for sure.
Is the point of all the conversations we have.
Yeah.
To understand.
Agreed. That was wonderful.
Thanks, Genay.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya next time.